And then when I collect these items, they go into my inventory bar here, and I can click on them to use them. Welcome back. Well, surprise, surprise, I've started a new game. Apparently, I have commitment issues. I guess it's just really hard to finish a project all the way through to the end. I decided to pick up a previous game idea that I made a few devlogs about, that you could collect various characters that would do different things. And at the time I really liked this idea. In fact, I'm not sure why I gave it up. I think it's because I started to make things too complicated too quickly, and then the workflow became too challenging, or the thought of the idea, the scope, became too much to continue. I've made a few simple sprites, a basic trap, some thorns which will do damage, and I've started to create some little power-ups. So you've got a fire power-up and we've got hearts, and I've created a little inventory bar at the bottom, and let me show you what happens when we pick these things up. It goes into the inventory bar. I can use the mouse wheel to scroll along the bottom. I have a shield which blocks arrows, and a sword which attacks in a melee style. And then when I collect these items, they go into my inventory bar here, and I can click on them to use them, and this will give me health power-ups. And if I was to use the fire, nothing will happen right now because I haven't put anything in to do anything, but I can click on the fire and then that will use a fire magic spell. And the idea is you can collect things, they'll go into this inventory bar here. If you collect little characters like in the previous devlog, then they will also go into the power-up bar, or the hot bar, sorry, at the bottom. And then if you reach the end of the level, you'll keep whatever items that you have in here, and then they'll go into a bigger inventory page. And that's kind of the idea that I've got at the moment. These little icons, I've also started making a little shield. These are basically little animations, just a 4-frame animation. The heart doesn't have any animation, and nor does the shield for that matter right now. Thorns are simply just 2 frames, 1 frame for when it's a thorn, and then a 2nd frame for when you've destroyed it. And there's an arrow and an arrow trap. And then, as always, I've created a player sprite which will control the animations, and a player base which has all of the behaviors that move the sprite around. And then in terms of the actual sprite itself, all I've done is create the knight so far and given it an idle animation. We kind of just shrugs up and down. An attack 1, which is a swipe of the sword, attack 2, which is a swipe the other way, and a spin, the shield block, a basic walk cycle, and a jump animation. Now I've given him 2 attacks, so instead of just being one swipe, one swipe, one swipe, if you click a second attack shortly after the first one finishes, he'll do the second one. So it's a 2-hit combo, if you like. And if you want to know a little bit more about 2-hit combos and how they work, I have a tutorial on that. In terms of the event sheet, I've put everything in quite nice and neatly. I've got some global variables at the top which control the player's speed and jump strength, because based on the player that you'll get or that you'll be able to use, they're going to all be able to have different move speeds and jump strengths, because the knight, for example, is going to be much slower than, say, an archer, who will be able to run faster because he'll have less armor on. I've got a variable that controls which character is currently selected, and then I've got HP so far for the 3 active characters that you'll start the game with, and then a global variable which controls where the select box position is. And the select box position is this little sprite here, which is an overlay. All it is just a 10x10 with a white border, and then that overlays this hotbar. Now this hotbar is made up of these individual sprites here called item slots, and then I've got a background, just a generic tile background underneath. There's 10 of these individual item slots, and they're all lined up next to each other, and they have a simple instance variable called isFull, and then that's defaulted to empty, because when we start the game these item slots are not full. When we pick up an item, it will change the individual item slot to full, which means that when we pick up the next item, the system will look for the next available slot which isn't full. And I've created a simple function to control this, which is basically add inventory with an item type, and then we've got a system for loop which says for each item slot, which are these little 10x10 empty sprites here, for each item slot that we have, if it's not full, we're going to run this code once. We're going to set the item slot to full, which running it once will stop every single one of these item slots here being filled with the same item. We're going to check to see which item type we're picking up, which will be either fire, shield or heart, and then we're going to get the system to create that object in the HUD, on the HUD layer, at that specific item slot. And because the perimeter on this function is item type, we simply pass that once we collide with that specific item. So if the player collides with the fire, we call the add inventory and we set the perimeter to fire, and then we destroy the pickup. If you want to know how that works, if you want to have a look through that in a bit more detail, all of the source code for all of the games that I start and never finish are uploaded to my Patreon, so you can go through and have a look and maybe pick it up where I left it off, or modify it and make it your own. And there's links to all of that in the description. And speaking of Patrons, I'd like to give a massive thank you and a shout out to my wonderful Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members: Foozle CC, Retro Galaxy, Olivier Bernier, Amari Lewis, Enmark Games, Jess Matt, Tor, Hamad Alexanderson, Rob, Martin K, Julian Cruz, Raulson Gonzalo, 8-Bit Gamer, Davey Wagnarok, and John Allegrezza. Thanks for supporting the Patreon and the YouTube and game dev journey. For more information about what's on offer on the Patreon, there's a link in the description.